How's it going, everyone? I am Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day, and welcome to today's Pokémon GO video. So, recently, it was revealed by dataminers that a new type of raid is coming to Pokémon GO, and they are seemingly going to involve Shadow Pokémon. This could have very positive and very negative ramifications for players and the game as a whole. I'm going to be talking about all of that in this video, so let's roll the intro and get right into it. Alright, let's talk about these new upcoming Shadow raids. So the good folks over at Pokéminers recently uncovered data for a new type of raid and a new type of raid pass in the game files. As it currently stands, both the raids and the raid pass are themed around Shadow Pokémon. We still don't have too much information on how these raids are going to work or what kind of rewards they will give you. Here is what Pokéminers said. Our real time is now starting. First up, there are new Shadow raids. There are 5 levels, and there is a new raid ticket specifically for these new Shadow raids. You get additional XP from these Shadow raids, and they appear to be remotable. All of this was data mined from the most recent APK update, so these raids could be coming as soon as the next Team Go Rocket event, which is just around the corner. So yeah, that's all we know so far. We can certainly speculate on how they will work and what will be required, or if they are going to have completely different mechanics to regular raids. But Outcomes Razor, they will probably just be the same raids we've been getting, only with Shadow Pokémon as the boss and encounter. So what are some of the Shadow raid bosses that we can expect? Well, first of all, there will likely be Shadow Legendaries.
Get ready to raid. Raid Shadow Legends.
Currently, the only way to get a Shadow Legendary is through Giovanni boss battles. The fact that we can now potentially get Shadow Legendaries through alternative means is pretty exciting in and of itself. If there were tier 5 Shadow raids, I would assume they would contain a Shadow Legendary, Shadow Ultra Beast, or even a Shadow Mythical. Think about what it would mean for the game if Shadow Legendaries were obtainable outside of Giovanni battles. If those Shadows had the raid IV floor, then it would be a lot more possible to have meta-relevant 100% IV Shadow Pokemon like Moltres, Raikou, and Mewtwo. It would make regular raids a lot easier, and open up more players to duo or solo raids. Another upside to Shadow raids would be the addition of challenging content that wouldn't require too many trainers. Let me explain. Imagine there being tier 1 raids with a Shadow Pokemon. This raid would be soloable, much like non-Shadow tier 1 raids, but you will need to strategize and use ideal counters. With the raid being just a bit more challenging, it would be a lot more engaging for high-level players, and the Pokemon encounter would be relevant. For tier 1 and tier 3 regular raids, there just isn't enough of an incentive for a player to engage with them. Daily raid passes, remote raid passes, and premium raid passes are better spent on legendary and mega evolution raids. But if the Pokemon were to be Shadow, then there are a lot more gameplay benefits that the player would gain. I'm also intrigued at the idea of special exclusive Shadow Pokemon being a part of Shadow raids. Like, the list of Shadow Pokemon we can get from Grunt battles, Leader battles, and even Giovanni battles can get quite stale after a while. Other than maybe 1 or 2 specific Shadow Pokemon that are raid relevant or PvP relevant, there's no reason why you would farm up Shadow Pokemon. In the current slate, for example, I can only think of 3, maybe 4 Shadow Pokemon that are actually worth getting out of the several dozen that are potentially obtainable. There's just a lot of potential that Niantic can tap into. I mean, if and when Shadow raids come out, I'm sure there will be a few Shadow Pokemon from these raids that will be useless. However, it would be a secondary rotation, and it would be a neat way for them to add some spice to the current pool of obtainable Shadow Pokemon. They can also tailor-make them to fit the current in-game event, season, or PvP meta. Finally, I also think this would be a great way to pick up high IV shiny Shadow Pokemon. These are always highly coveted by veteran Pokémon GO players. Having Shadow raids with the potential to pick up shiny Shadows adds a bit more control to players who want specific ones. So yeah, if it is true that Shadow raids are coming to Pokémon GO, then I do think there are a lot of positive things to look forward to. However, there are a few negatives to Shadow raids that we do have to watch out for. As I mentioned before, the data mined info regarding Shadow raids also indicates that they will require a special kind of raid pass. You probably already know what I'm about to talk about. This could be an egregious way for Niantic to monetize Pokémon GO. I mentioned earlier about Shadow raids having exclusive special Shadow Pokémon and Shadow Legendaries. I would imagine that these Pokémon would be the most powerful in the game. Well, if the only way to get them was through spending Pokecoins for special Shadow Raid passes, then Niantic has a new way to nickel and dime their players. This would also be the most blatant pay-to-win strategy in Pokemon GO as well. Currently, you can obtain Shadow Pokemon through regular gameplay. Whether it be grunt battles or leader battles, there is never a case where spending any money is an absolute requirement. While I would assume there would be free-to-play methods for obtaining Shadow Pokemon through Shadow Raids, realistically, it will attract a lot of in-app purchases. We already know that these raids will require a special raid pass, one that I'm predicting will be sold at a premium price in the Pokeshop. If they have a powerful Shadow Legendary in Shadow Raids, then players will do as many of them as they can, which means, of course, they are going to spend a lot of money. I think the other issue with having Shadow Raids is the inevitable decline in value of non-Shadow Pokemon. For example, if it were possible to obtain multiple high IV Shadow Moltres or Entei, then it would make Pokemon like Reshiram obsolete. Right now, because Shadow Legendaries are so scarce, it strikes a good balance between using both Shadow Pokemon and regular Pokemon in raids and PvP. However, opening up Shadow Legendaries to more players means other content will no longer be relevant. So yeah, as much as there are positives to look forward to when it comes to Shadow Raids, we also have plenty of negatives to worry about. Hopefully, Niantic comes up with a decent solution to all of these problems, because the potential for Shadow Raids to be a great form of new gameplay is definitely there. It's just going to depend on how Niantic executes them. Who knows, maybe by the time you watch this video, official details regarding Shadow Raids will have already been released. We'll just have to wait and see how Niantic approaches them. Anyways, that is going to be it for this video. Leave your thoughts regarding this upcoming new feature down below. Are you looking forward to Shadow Raids? Let me know in the comments, and let's have a great discussion. And if you ended up enjoying this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in any way, big or small, then be sure to check out the links in the description below. For all my patrons, they get a permanent spot on my in-game friends list, so if you want to interact with me in some way, like with remote raids, then do consider becoming a patron on my Patreon. But yeah, that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.